2 Cup drivers in there, or is it going to be kind of stretched out and we're just not going to see, in every race we're going to see some Cup driver in the event, and maybe it even makes it worse too. I don't think it will, but we'll see how that rule goes. But I kind of like it because there's been so many races this year too. When I saw Kyle Busch in the race, it was basically not worth even watching. I mean, I remember back when Austin Dillon, he's getting up there on his five years of service in the Cup Series to go back down to the Xfinity Series, but he passed Kyle Busch on the last lap when Kyle Busch blew that tire and he tried to limp around and hold on for the win. But I missed it because Kyle Busch was winning it, and in all intents and purposes, he had that race won. So, there's that. Other things that happen, a lot of football games going on today. Of course, the Green Bay Packers lose a heartbreaker 33-32. The game pretty much billed as expected. And I think, as far as I was concerned, I thought the Atlanta Falcons were going into that game were going to win it. Especially, the Packers offense, I think today performed a lot better than I thought they would. And they kind of had a lull in the third quarter, but so did the Falcons. There was a stretch of that game, where it looked like it could have gone. I mean, it could have gone either way at the end of the day, but Atlanta kind of getting the job done with 40 seconds to go. The Packers unable to drive down the field in 30 seconds, which they did before halftime. So that was the difference. Basically, in the first half, it was 24-19, and then in the second half, the Falcons scored twice, the Packers scored once. So there's a little bit of a dry spell for the Packers offense in the second half. Couldn't quite get it going as aggressively as they did in the first half, which has been a part of a problem for the Packers all year long. But I think overall you did have Randall Cobb out. You did have Ty Montgomery out. I think a big part of that running game, and with Ty Montgomery being out, I think that hurt them. Although we did see Devontae Adams back there, lining up in the running back position and kind of catching passes out of the backfield. But I almost wonder that, if we would have seen a little bit more run plays from Ty Montgomery this week than we did last week, with his 6 carries. Because it still looked, some of the good things, even Don Jackson came in there. He didn't rush for a whole lot of yards, but it looks like if he gets a little bit better, a little bit more into game ready, I think he'll be right. He seemed to not fall on first contact, didn't gain a whole lot of yards, but maybe there's a little bit of promise there. I kind of do like his running style. Miles Davis, again, still early for him in the offense. We're talking about him a week and a half with the ball club. We'll see what happens from here on out, but he'll be featured more in the offense. Ripkowski, he did a lot of the running out of the running backs. He had probably the most yards, but then of course Aaron Rodgers kind of had to take the ball in his own hands too. So, this one I really think too. I've seen our buddy Dan Casper had to defend Mike McCarthy after the game. Some guy on Twitter was blaming McCarthy on that loss, and I've said stuff. If the Packers don't win this division, and now at 4-3, and you got the Minnesota Vikings playing tomorrow night against the Bears, more than likely going to win the game. It's going to be a long, tall road unless we do see an epic collapse for the Minnesota Vikings in the second half of the year. But I still see the Packers playing the getting into the playoffs. But I said for McCarthy that they needed to win this division, or maybe it's time to move on. But I think we are. One of the big things he's in control of right now is that offense. It looks like it's getting better. I still wouldn't say it's. You put up 32 points. A lot of times you should win those games. You can say that, they put up those 24 points in the first half and they only put up 8 points in the second half. I'm sure that will be brought up as well. But I think with such a lack of a running game, and that's pretty much how they're going to have to do this, maybe for here on out. But I think they performed pretty well. they really couldn't keep the defense honest, I think, a whole lot because of that lack of running game, except for maybe on that 2-point conversion try when they did, that was the drive they stuffed it or shoved it to Aaron Ripkowski a few times, and he got a few yards, so they kind of bit on that one. But I think really just that defensive side of the ball, I think this defense still can be a decent defense. You are playing one of the better offenses. And if you look at a lot of the games the Atlanta Falcons played this year, those were the scores. I mean, if they were winning or losing them, now they're a team that's also, they're 5-3, but they're a team that also that lost some of these games, going last week, I think 33-30 in overtime to the San Diego Chargers. They put up a lot of points, they give up a lot of points. We basically played a game at Atlanta and played Atlanta ball. We came close. It was a heartbreaking loss, but I think there's some good signs to take away, and I think too if we maybe would have had just one of them, especially Gunter, cornerbacks. If we had one of the 3 starting cornerbacks in this game, I think we could have maybe made that one more stop that the Packers needed to win that game. Gunter, I think he got hurt towards the end of that game, and they had to bring in Bryce a little bit more, and just the depth on the cornerbacks right now isn't there, and it showed. And I think the other thing with that, I mean, you looked at what the Packers did to Julio Jones. They did a good job containing him, but and this happens a lot of times too when teams go out there to try to focus on one guy and try to stop him. Sometimes you can be successful in doing so, but then you open up other things, and especially with that lack of depth in the cornerback position for the Green Bay Packers, you had to, I think guys like Gabriel, Sanu, Freeman, the running game, looked good for the first half of the game. The running defense looked good in the first half of the game, but really showed a little bit of weakness in that second half, and I think that was a lot attributed to that this team was just playing a lot of pass defense, trying to focus on Julio Jones and doing the best they could with everyone else too, and it was just a little too much for him. I kind of think we've seen the same thing in that Dallas game too. That once any team right now with this, until we see Rollins and Randall back, we know we're not going to see Shields back for at least 8 weeks as he went on IR. If we get at least a few of those guys back, and we can shut down some of these good receivers, and I think with the experience that Randall and Goodson are getting, starting these games, that they might be able to develop and be guys that can hold their own, and maybe not need Sam Shields so much for him to get back if being out this long with 2 concussions over the past 2 years, maybe, I don't know, out the door in Green Bay, but maybe just in football in general. So we'll see what happens there. But that needs to be fixed. But at some points too, they did look too that they were getting pressure on Matt Ryan. Force him throw, get a few sacks. That helped in that kind of after that first drive in the third quarter. But on that last drive especially, just not able to get it done. But it's a thrilling game. I think it's one of those games that I think I can't remember going into the pre-season picks that was maybe one of the games I thought they would lose. Maybe didn't think that they'd lose to the Dallas Cowboys. I think that was a surprising one. Minnesota, that was maybe a toss-up game there too. I don't think anyone would have been surprised if the Packers split that series, but I still think at 4-3, it's part of it's a disappointing 4-3, but the other part of it too is I'm not going to hit the panic button yet on the season, saying that we're to the point of we're not going to make the playoffs. But if fans like I know Rudy can be, if you want to hit that panic button because we're probably not going to win the Super Bowl, we'll see about that. You get in. And maybe it's just one of those things that might end up working good. If we can still get, we're 6 wins away from getting to 10 wins. You're playing a very beatable team next week in the Colts, and then you're playing some games on the road that might prove a little tough. Tennessee, it's a very winnable game if you have your defensive guys healthy. But, and not getting ahead of yourself, too, and seeing wins. But there's some winnable games coming up ahead on the schedule. So, I'm sure the Packers will keep focused. I'm sure Aaron Rodgers and the day that he had today, as far as his confidence, I think is going to be back up. I think one of those things, too, I was talking to my dad about, when we were trying to, when everyone was trying to solve the Packers' problems and see what was going on. And it's almost, almost my dad's default answer to say, he doesn't care anymore. Kind of like Brett Favre. I know he used it for that, but I don't know if it's a point. If you don't care, I guess get off the football field. And I think Aaron Rodgers by no means wants to get off that football field. And maybe the fire has dimmed a little bit, I guess you can say. But I think more than anything, and even when he said it about Favre back in the day, as we're just comparing these two guys continuously, as we know what's going to happen throughout their career, but with Favre and Rodgers, but in those stretches where they struggled, a lot of times it was just the team. Part of it was the team around them. Part of it was some of the stupid mistakes that both of them are making, and they were just frustrated. They were visibly frustrated, and sometimes you maybe go so numb. We all have when something's going that shitty for you, you don't maybe cave in and just say, screw it, we're not even trying anymore. But you just think you do something going, well, this obviously isn't going to work. So, but whatever, here I go. I'm just going to toss this ball up in the air and see what happens. And I don't think Rodgers necessarily did that either, but I think he did lose a lot of trust in his guys. But when things are going good, he's fired up. I think we've seen a little bit of that today too. And Aaron Rodgers potentially could be back. It looks like he's got his mojo back. Some of these receivers need to step up a little bit. I think we've seen even at the end of the game today too, and throughout the game, guys like Jordy Nelson maybe making uncharacteristic mistakes, dropping balls, bobbling balls, stuff like that. That catch at the end of the half where, Jordy Nelson bobbled that ball and then he still caught it, but. And she made a reaction to me because we do always talk about Davante Adams and how my wife's family never believed in Davante Adams since day one for some reason. But she made a comment saying that Jordan or Nelson or Adams, would never have caught that ball. And I'm like, man, you can't. I mean. Yeah, you're happy that he caught it. I'm happy I cheered when he caught it. But then at the same time, I was like, man, Nelson doesn't do stuff like that. He doesn't bobble the ball because he has sure hands. His hands, I don't know if he's just not confident in the way he's running routes or the way he's just portraying himself on the field because it's almost affecting his hand, his ball security. It's just he's a little bit off. And Davante Adams, on that one route, too, when, it was time to play street ball on that 4th and 3. Could have easily got open. Rodgers, kind of expected something. But, if you're still playing street ball, you got to throw at the receiver or make sure the guy's looking at you, too. But, on that one. But I still think some of those guys, I think, and maybe this is part of the reason the Packers released Jared Abbrederis. I think, Rodgers, they said that he liked what he saw from Jared Abbrederis, but I think we've seen Geronimo Allison in his first game since he got called up in that kind of adjacent move to that, to placing Abbrederis on IR and eventually signing Geronimo Allison. I think he showed that he comes back to the quarterback. He makes, he runs that route if he's not open. If Rodgers is scrambling, he moves around. I think even even Trevor Davis did the same thing. He looked pretty good doing that in his limited action as well. And, we'll see what happens here too. But I think a lot of the receivers looked